It started with a knock on my door. Not the friendly kind, but the heavy, demanding kind. 4 men stood there, dressed like they owned the neighborhood. Voices loud, eyes sharp, and one demand on their lips. Hand over your guns, right now. But what they didn't know was that behind my calm smile stood the full weight of U.S. Army protocol. And when I stepped forward, with my hands behind my back, they realized they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Welcome back, my friends, to HOA Rule Stories, the place where we share the battles, the drama, and the truth about homeowner associations. My name is John Miller. I live right here in the heart of Texas, a simple man with a quiet life, but I've seen my fair share of HOA trouble, and I tell these stories so none of you have to face it alone. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. Think of it like pulling up a rocking chair on the porch, sitting with neighbors who understand. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? I love knowing which part of America my neighbors are tuning in from. The night was quiet after my introduction, but that silence did not last long. I had just settled down, a glass of iced tea on the table, the hum of crickets outside my porch, when that knock came again. Heavy. Sharp. The kind of knock that makes your chest tighten before you even stand up. I opened the door, and there they were. 4 men. Dressed like they had authority. Matching shirts. Clipboard in one hand. Flashlight in the other. They didn't even say good evening. One of them stepped forward. His voice was sharp, like he'd practiced it in front of a mirror. Sir, we need your firearms. HOA regulation. I blinked. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. Firearms? HOA regulation? That made no sense at all. I looked at the man. His head was shaved clean, his jaw tight. He stared at me as if I was already guilty. The others shifted behind him, hands on their belts, trying to look official. But something about them didn't feel right. I asked, calm as I could, do you boys even know what you're asking? The leader smirked. We don't ask. We take. Hand them over, or things will get rough. I stepped back just an inch. My hands moved behind my back. Not in fear, but in habit. Old Army habit. When things heat up, you steady yourself. You hide your strength until the right moment. They thought I was folding. They thought I was about to give in. But I wasn't folding. I was watching. Reading them. Just like I used to read enemy scouts overseas. Their eyes told the truth. Nervous. Shifting. 2 of them weren't even sure they wanted to be there. But the leader, oh, he wanted control. He needed it. I said softly, not today, boys. The words hung in the air. One of them frowned. What did you just say? I leaned closer. I said, not today. You won't take a single thing from me tonight. They froze. For the first time since they arrived, they didn't know what to do. Maybe it was the way I stood. Maybe it was the calm in my voice. Or maybe it was the quiet reminder that I wasn't just some old man living on a street they thought they could control. Because here's the truth they didn't know. I served under U.S. Army command. I spent years following protocol, training men, protecting ground that others thought was impossible to hold. I'd seen real danger. I'd seen real soldiers. These men? They were just playing dress-up in HOA shirts. The leader tried again, louder this time. You don't understand, sir. This is regulation. We've got the power to confiscate if you don't cooperate. I couldn't help but laugh. Regulation? Show me the paperwork. Show me the law. Show me the badge that says you have that right. Of course, they had none. All they had was bluff. And bluff only works if the other man is scared. And I wasn't scared. Not one bit. The man holding the clipboard stepped forward. He looked younger. His hands trembled just a little. He glanced at the others before saying, "We don't need to show you anything. We've got orders." "Orders from who?" I asked. Silence. His eyes darted. He didn't have an answer. That's when I realized these men weren't just HOA thugs. They were something worse. Pretending to be more than they were. Testing me. Testing how far they could push. But they picked the wrong house. I remembered a lesson from the army. A simple one. Stand firm. Hold your ground. The one who blinks first loses. So I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I just kept my hands steady behind my back, and I let the weight of silence do the work. Finally, the leader snapped. "Listen, old man. We don't have time for games. Either you hand over your guns, or we'll come inside and get them ourselves." That was it. That was the line. The moment they showed their real face. They weren't neighbors. They weren't officials. They were intruders. And intruders only understand one thing: strength. I straightened my shoulders. I stepped closer to the doorframe, blocking it completely. My voice didn't rise. In fact, it dropped lower. Slower. Stronger. You step 1 foot inside this house, and you'll regret it for the rest of your lives. They froze again. Because when a man speaks like that, calm, certain, you know he's not bluffing. The porch light above us flickered just a little. Crickets sang louder in the distance. And in that moment, time felt heavy, like the whole world was waiting to see what would happen next. Would they call my bluff? Would they dare cross the line? Or would they realize this wasn't a fight they could win? And that's when I'll stop right here, because I want to ask you something. If men like this showed up at your door, pretending to be HOA cops, demanding your freedom, your property, your rights, what would you do? Would you stand firm like I did? Or would you give in to their false authority? Tell me in the comments, because your answer might be the very thing someone else needs to hear tonight. The man's eyes narrowed when I didn't move. His jaw clenched, his fists curled tight, and for a moment, I could see the storm boiling inside him. He wasn't used to resistance. He wasn't used to someone standing their ground. But that's the thing about real authority: it doesn't shout, it doesn't beg, it doesn't hide behind fake rules. It just is. And they felt it. They felt it in the silence between my words. The leader shifted, taking half a step forward. His boots scratched against the wood of my porch. The sound was sharp, almost like a warning shot. Behind him, the younger man with the clipboard spoke again, his voice cracking this time. "Come on, let's just take them. That's what we're here for." I studied him carefully. His hands shook more now. His voice had lost its edge. He wasn't convinced of his own words. That told me something important: this group wasn't united. They weren't a real team. They were held together by fear, not by loyalty. The leader spun his head toward him. "Shut up. We're not leaving without the guns." That was it. He had just shown me the weakness in their armor. A weak link. And when there's a weak link, the whole chain can break. I leaned against the doorframe, almost casual, but inside every muscle was alive, ready. "You know what's funny?" I said slowly. "I've been in situations tougher than this, and I've seen men who thought they were in control lose everything in a single second." The leader glared. "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled, just enough to make him uneasy. "It means you think you're the hunters tonight, but you're not. You're just kids playing soldier in the wrong man's yard." His face turned red. Rage flashed in his eyes. "Don't test me, old man," he barked. "But rage is sloppy. Rage makes you careless. And carelessness is dangerous, for him, not for me." The other two men in the back exchanged glances. I could see doubt growing in their faces. One of them rubbed his neck nervously, the other shuffled his boots like he wanted to step away but didn't dare. The leader tried to regain control. He pointed a finger at me. This is your last chance. Hand them over, or we're coming in. I let the silence hang again. Silence can be louder than shouting if you know how to use it. Then, slowly, I leaned in closer so my words cut through the night. You step inside this door, and you will learn what it feels like when military protocol meets false authority. And trust me, you won't like the ending. The clipboard man's face went pale. He muttered something under his breath, too quiet for me to catch. The two in the back shifted uncomfortably again. But the leader, he was stubborn. He puffed his chest, trying to look bigger, stronger. He didn't realize he was losing them. He didn't realize every second that passed was pulling the ground out from under his feet. I decided to push it further. You want to test me? I asked. My voice was calm, even. Then go ahead. Take one more step. But before you do, ask yourself this: do you know what's behind my back? Do you know if you'll be walking away tonight? Their eyes dropped to my hands. They couldn't see the revolver, but they knew something was there. The leader's throat bobbed as he swallowed. He was trying to act tough, but his body betrayed him. His shoulders tensed. His breathing grew shallow. His bluff was cracking. That's when I remembered something my drill sergeant once told me. Control the room with your calm. A man who stays calm while others lose their heads always wins. So I stayed calm. I didn't flinch. I didn't break eye contact. I just let the weight of the moment crush them. Finally, the youngest one spoke again, louder this time. We should go. This isn't worth it. The leader snapped at him. Shut up. We're not leaving empty-handed. But it was too late. The spell was breaking. The doubt was spreading like wildfire. The two in the back were shifting more, their eyes darting between me and their so-called leader. I could see it clear as day. They didn't want this fight. They wanted out. And I was going to give them a door. You boys have a choice, I said firmly. You can follow this fool into a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your lives, or you can walk away right now, with your dignity still intact. The leader growled. Don't listen to him. He's bluffing. But my calm was stronger than his rage. And the more he shouted, the smaller he looked. One of the men finally broke. He stepped back off the porch. I'm done. I'm not going to jail for this. The other followed. Yeah, me too. This isn't what we signed up for. Now it was just the leader and the shaky clipboard kid. 2 against 1. But even they knew they'd already lost. The leader turned back to me, his face twisted in anger. But behind his anger, I saw fear. You'll regret this, he spat. We'll be back. I held his gaze steady. You come back, and you better be ready for more than porch lights and crickets. For a moment, we just stood there. His rage against my calm. His fake authority against my real resolve. And then, he turned. He stormed off the porch, barking at the last man to follow him. The sound of their boots faded into the night. The crickets sang louder again, as if the world itself was exhaling after holding its breath. I closed the door slowly. I locked it. I leaned against it for just a moment, letting the quiet wash over me. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. They weren't gone for good. And the real question was not if they'd come back, but how. So let me ask you something. When fake authority shows up at your doorstep, demanding something they have no right to take, would you call the cops? Would you confront them head-on like I did? Or, would you prepare in silence and let them walk into their own mistake? Tell me in the comments, because your answer might just be the lesson another neighbor needs tonight. The door clicked shut, and for a moment, I thought the night was mine again. But peace doesn't come that easy, not when men like that feel humiliated. I walked through my living room slowly, lights dim, eyes scanning the shadows. My revolver was still in my grip, heavy, familiar. My heart wasn't racing, no. Years in the army had trained that out of me. My pulse was steady. my breathing calm. But my mind was sharp as a blade. I pulled the curtain back just an inch. And there they were. Not gone. Not at all. Their figures moved near the end of the street, under the dim glow of the lamppost. 3 of them now, standing together, whispering. The leader was pacing, hands waving in the air like a man who'd lost control of his own troops. I knew that body language. I'd seen it before, when commanders lost the respect of their men. It was only a matter of time before the cracks split wide open. But cracks in their group didn't mean safety for me. No, it meant desperation. And desperation makes men dangerous. I turned away from the window and checked the locks again. Doors. Windows. Every entry. Not out of fear, but because discipline is survival. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I could almost hear my own heartbeat echo off the wooden floors. And then, another sound. A shuffle. A scrape. Near the back. I moved carefully, every step measured. Out the kitchen, toward the back door. My eyes caught the flicker of a shadow through the glass. Someone was there. I raised the revolver. My voice was low but firm. Step away from that door. Silence. Then a whisper from the other side. Sir, please, it wasn't my idea. It was the young one. The clipboard kid. His voice shook through the glass like dry leaves in the wind. I didn't lower my weapon. Why are you here? I don't want to do this anymore. He's crazy. He's not listening. He thinks you're bluffing. He says he'll come back with more men. The kid's words poured out like water from a broken pipe. Fear was dripping off every syllable. I opened the door just an inch, enough for my eyes to lock onto his. His face was pale, sweat dripping down his temple. He wasn't lying. Fear has a look you can't fake. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because, he swallowed hard. Because I don't want to end up in jail, or worse. I just wanted easy money. I didn't sign up to fight someone like you. For the first time that night, I felt something shift. Not pity, not yet. But clarity. This boy wasn't built for this game. He was a pawn being pushed by a man who thought power came from fear. I lowered the gun slightly, still careful. You've got a choice tonight, son. Walk away now, or stay tied to him and pay his price. His eyes darted back toward the street, where the leader still paced under the lamppost. Then back to me. He whispered, I can't just leave. He knows where I live. He'll come after me. I took a deep breath. The kind that carries years of weight. Then you better figure out if you'd rather fear him, or fear yourself for the rest of your life. The kid's lips trembled. He looked down. Then without another word, he turned and walked off into the night, heading in the opposite direction of the others. One less. But the real storm was still brewing at the end of the street. I knew I couldn't sit back. Men like that leader, they don't stop. They regroup. They plan. They come harder the second time. So I did what the army trained me to do. I prepared. I checked the blinds. Cleared the hallway. Positioned myself where I had cover and visibility. Every step, every movement was muscle memory from years gone by. Protocol. Discipline. Survival. Minutes passed. Maybe an hour. The night dragged heavy. And then, headlights. A car rolled slow down the street. Black SUV. No plates visible from the angle. It stopped near the lamppost. The leader walked up to it, leaned into the window. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. Whoever was inside wasn't just a friend. They were someone he thought could tip the balance. The back door opened, and a larger man stepped out. Broad shoulders. Dark jacket. The kind of man who didn't need to shout to command attention. And just like that, the stakes had changed. The leader pointed down the street toward my house. The big man nodded once. Slow. Certain. I knew right then, tonight wasn't over. It was just beginning. My grip tightened around the revolver. My jaw clenched. And in that moment, the weight of all my training, all my years, came rushing back. This wasn't just an HOA dispute anymore. This was war. The porch light flickered again, casting long shadows across the yard. The crickets fell silent, as if even they knew the night was holding its breath. I whispered to myself. All right then, let's see how far you're willing to go. And as their footsteps drew closer, as the echo of boots hit the pavement, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The real test had just arrived. So let me ask you, neighbors. If you saw headlights pulling up outside your home at midnight, strange men stepping out, whispering your name, pointing at your door, would you sit back and pray they pass by? Would you call for help and hope someone comes? Or would you stand tall, like I did, and prepare for whatever was about to walk through the dark? Tell me in the comments, because sometimes, your answer is the story waiting to be told next. The night felt heavier the moment that big man stepped out of the SUV. It wasn't just his size. It was the way he moved. Slow. Careful. Like someone who already knew how to control a room before even stepping inside. His eyes scanned the street, sharp and cold, before locking straight on my house. I've seen men like him before. Not soldiers. Not trained the same way I was. But enforcers. The kind who thrive on intimidation. The kind who don't need to shout, because their silence does the talking. The leader of the thugs lit up instantly, standing taller, his chest puffed out again like he just regained all the authority he lost minutes earlier. He pointed toward my porch with a trembling hand, trying to hide his nerves behind the shadow of the bigger man. I stayed still. Hidden behind the curtain. Breathing slow. Watching. The SUV door shut with a deep thud. The big man whispered something into the leader's ear. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the effect. The leader's shoulders dropped, his lips curved into a grin, his eyes sparked with false confidence. Whatever the big man promised him, it gave him courage again. And now, they were walking. Step by step. Boots echoing on the pavement. Straight toward me. Every step reminded me of patrols I'd done overseas. Only this time, I wasn't in a uniform. I was home. My home. And that made this battlefield even more personal. I steadied myself. My revolver was already warm in my grip. But I knew I couldn't just rely on steel. Tonight was about presence. About control. About letting them know this wasn't going to be their victory. They reached the porch. 3 shadows stretched across my lawn. The leader knocked again, harder than before. The wood rattled under his fist. Open up, he barked. This is your last warning. The big man didn't knock. He didn't speak. He just stood to the side, arms folded, eyes never leaving the door. He was measuring me without even seeing me, waiting to see how I'd respond. I took a slow breath. Then I opened the door just enough to be seen. The porch light flickered, throwing sharp lines across my face. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I just stood there, revolver still tucked behind my back. You came back faster than I thought, I said calmly. The leader smirked. Told you we don't leave empty-handed. This time, you're not walking away with your little army scare tactics. I tilted my head, eyes narrowing on the bigger man. And who's this? Your courage on 2 legs? The leader sneered. This is someone who makes sure people like you learn respect. The big man finally spoke. His voice was low. Gravelly. We don't want trouble, but if you don't cooperate, you'll force my hand. I studied him carefully. He wasn't sloppy like the others. No nervous twitches. No darting eyes. He was steady. dangerous. But here's the thing about men like him, they're used to people folding at the first sign of pressure. They expect fear. They feed on it. And I wasn't about to give him that satisfaction. I took a slow step forward, leaning into the light. My voice didn't rise, but it carried weight. You can stand there all night, trying to look like you hold the power, but the truth is simple. This is my home. My ground. My rules. And no man, not you, not him, not anyone, takes what belongs to me without paying a price. The leader laughed, but it sounded forced. You're bluffing. You think you can scare us with words? I let my hand shift just slightly behind my back, enough for the shape of the revolver to show in the dim light. His laugh died quick. His eyes darted. The big man didn't flinch. His gaze stayed locked. But I noticed the small things. The way his jaw tightened. The way his hand brushed against his jacket like he was checking for something inside. I knew that move. I'd seen it in too many standoffs. He was armed. The air between us grew thick. The leader's cocky grin vanished. The other two men behind him shuffled nervously, glancing between their leader and the SUV like they wanted to disappear. I raised my chin slightly. You want to cross this line? Then do it. But remember, once you cross, there's no going back. The porch fell silent. Even the night seemed to hush, waiting for the choice to be made. The big man stepped closer, his boots heavy on the wooden boards. He stopped just feet from me. Our eyes locked. I've dealt with stubborn men before, he said, slow and steady. They all break eventually. I leaned forward. Then you've never dealt with me. For a moment, it was just two men. Eye to eye. Neither moving. Neither blinking. A battle without bullets, but just as dangerous. The leader finally snapped, breaking the silence. Enough of this. We're wasting time. Go in and take them. But the big man didn't move. He just kept staring at me. Thinking. Calculating. And in that pause, I saw it. Doubt. Not fear, doubt. He wasn't sure. He wasn't sure if this fight was worth it. If I was the kind of man who would take it all the way. I decided to tip the scale. You call yourself strong, I said firmly. But strength isn't forcing your way into another man's home. Strength is knowing when to walk away. Question is, are you strong enough to walk away tonight? The leader spun toward him, furious. Don't listen to him. He's bluffing. But the big man didn't answer. His eyes stayed on me, reading me like I was reading him. Seconds passed. Long, heavy seconds. Then finally, he stepped back. Just one step. But it was enough. The leader's face twisted in rage. What are you doing? The big man's voice was quiet. He's not bluffing. The leader cursed under his breath, spit flying as he turned away. He kicked the railing, shouted at the others to follow, and stormed back toward the SUV. The big man lingered 1 second longer, his eyes still locked on me. Then he gave the slightest nod, before turning to leave. The SUV roared to life, tires crunching against gravel as it rolled away into the darkness. I stood there, breath steady, revolver still firm in my grip. Victory didn't feel like cheers or applause. It felt like silence. Heavy. Lonely. But certain. I closed the door once again. Locked it. Sat down in the chair by the window, staring out at the empty street. I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Men like that don't give up forever. They regroup. They wait. They come back stronger. And the question in my mind wasn't if, it was when. So let me ask you. If a man stronger, bigger, colder than the rest stood on your porch, testing your resolve, staring straight into your eyes, would you flinch? Would you break? Or would you stand tall, calm, and let him be the one to step back first? Tell me in the comments, because your answer might show just what kind of strength you truly carry inside. The night grew quieter after they left, but it wasn't the kind of quiet that brings peace. It was the heavy quiet. The kind that presses against your chest, makes you listen harder, makes you wonder what's waiting just beyond the dark. I sat by the window, revolver on my lap, eyes locked on the street. The SUV was gone, but the feeling of being hunted, it hadn't gone with it. Because deep down, I knew men like that don't walk away for good. They plan. They regroup. They plot in the shadows. And sometimes, they come back when you least expect them. The clock ticked slow. Midnight passed. 1. 2. My house was wrapped in silence, but my mind stayed sharp. Every creak of the wood. Every shift in the wind. Every small sound felt louder than usual. Then it came. Not the knock this time. Not boots on the porch. A car engine, slow, crawling. I leaned forward. Headlights crawled down the street again, but this time it wasn't the same SUV. Smaller. Older. Rust on the bumper. And when it stopped, it didn't park in front of my house. It parked 2 doors down, under a dead tree, half hidden in the shadows. 2 figures stepped out. Not the leader. Not the big man. Different ones. New faces. They weren't dressed the same. No HOA shirts. No clipboards. Just dark jackets and hats pulled low. That told me everything. The game had changed. The HOA thugs had called in outsiders. I stayed still. Watching. Measuring. The men didn't walk straight to my house. They circled the block first. Slow. Careful. Looking at every yard, every porch, every shadow. Like wolves sniffing before they strike. One of them stopped near my mailbox, crouched down like he was checking something. My name was written there bold, clear. He traced his finger over it. And then he smiled. That smile cut deeper than the knock earlier. Because it wasn't about rules anymore. It wasn't about HOA power plays. It was personal now. I pulled the curtain back and set my revolver on the table beside me. I thought hard. I could call the cops. But I knew how that would go. They'd show up late, take a report, maybe drive by the neighborhood once or twice. But by then, the damage could already be done. No, this was mine to handle. I stood. Walked to the back door. Opened it slow. The night air was cold, brushing against my face. I stepped out into the yard, boots pressing into the grass. The men were still near the street, whispering to each other. They didn't notice me yet. I cleared my throat loud enough to cut through the night. Their heads snapped up. Eyes wide. You boys lost? I asked, my voice calm, steady. They froze. One of them nudged the other, as if daring him to speak. Finally, the taller one answered. We're just checking the neighborhood. Making sure everything's safe. I chuckled low. Safe? You call hiding under trees and sneaking around mailboxes safe? The shorter one stepped forward, his hand sliding into his jacket pocket. Look, old man, we don't want trouble. Just give us what we came for, and we'll be gone. I tilted my head. And what exactly is that? The taller one grinned. Your guns. Same as before. But this time, we're not asking twice. There it was. The truth out in the open. I straightened my shoulders, voice steady as steel. If you came here thinking you'd succeed where the others failed, you're in for a long night. The shorter one scoffed. You think you're tough because you stood up to a couple of HOA clowns? We're not them. We don't walk away. He stepped closer. Too close. I raised my revolver just enough for the moonlight to kiss the steel. The sound of the click echoed louder than thunder in that quiet night. Both men froze. You're right, I said. You're not them. but you'll leave the same way they did. Empty-handed. For a moment, no one moved. Just the cold wind brushing between us. Then the taller one chuckled, but there was no humor in it. You can't stay awake forever, old man. Sooner or later, you'll slip. And when you do, we'll be here. His words were meant to scare me. But they did something else instead. They confirmed it. This wasn't just an HOA stunt anymore. This was organized. Planned. Someone higher was pulling strings, sending men in waves. I kept my revolver raised, eyes locked on them. Maybe. But tonight isn't that night. They hesitated. Whispered between themselves. Finally, with a glare, they backed away, retreating toward their rusty car. The engine sputtered. Headlights flickered. And then they drove off into the dark. I lowered my revolver slowly, my jaw tight. Victory again, but it didn't feel final. Because the truth hit me right then. This wasn't about HOA dues. It wasn't about property rules. It was a test. A bigger test. And I was right in the middle of it. I went back inside, locked every door, sat back in my chair. My body was calm, but my mind was alive. I thought about the big man. About the leader's rage. About these new faces. Someone was sending them. Someone who wanted me broken. But what they didn't understand is that I don't break. I whispered to myself, you want a war, then you'll get one. The clock ticked again. The night rolled deeper. And my resolve only grew stronger. So let me ask you something, friends. If men came to your house not once, not twice, but 3 times in one night, each time stronger than before, would you see it as fear knocking at your door? Or would you see it as a challenge, a chance to prove what kind of backbone you really carry? Tell me in the comments, because how you see that choice says everything about the kind of person you are. The night dragged on, but my eyes refused to close. Every creak of the floor. Every whisper of the wind against the siding. Every faint hum from the streetlight outside. It all kept me sharp. Because I knew men like that don't give up after 3 tries. If they'd sent a bigger man than outsiders, what came next wouldn't be smaller. It would be heavier. More dangerous. And I was right. At around 3 in the morning, the silence broke again. This time, not by knocks, not by engines, but by footsteps. Many footsteps. I peeked through the curtain. Shadows moved across my lawn. Not 2. Not 3. At least 5. Maybe 6. Their shapes blurred under the dim porch light, but I could see enough. They weren't sneaking this time. They were marching. One of them carried a crowbar. Another had a flashlight, sweeping it side to side like he was already inside my house. And leading them was the same leader from before. His face twisted in anger, pride shattered from the earlier standoff. He wasn't bluffing anymore. He was desperate. And desperate men are the most dangerous. I stepped back, revolver firm in my grip. My pulse stayed steady, but I could feel the weight of the moment pressing heavy against my chest. This was no longer about words. This was the moment action would decide everything. The first slam hit the front door. Wood cracked, but it held. Another slam. Then another. The house shook with each hit. I shouted loud, my voice carrying through the walls. You try breaking in here, and you'll regret it. But they didn't stop. The crowbar tore at the frame. The flashlight beam sliced across my living room through the cracks. I raised my revolver, sight trained on the door. My breath was calm. My fingers steady. Military protocol, I whispered to myself, hold your ground, make them second guess. The next slam came. Louder. The hinges screamed. I fired one shot into the ceiling above the door. The sound thundered through the house, louder than any knock, sharper than any shout. The footsteps froze. Silence fell. I stepped closer to the door, voice low but carrying weight. That was your warning. The next one won't miss. For a long moment, no one moved. I could almost hear their breathing outside, heavy, ragged, uncertain. Then the leader shouted, trying to cover his fear. You can't scare us forever. We'll take what we want. I steadied my aim at the crack of light along the frame. You've already lost. Every second you stand there proves it. Another silence. Then whispers. I couldn't make out the words, but I heard the doubt. It was crawling through them like fire on dry leaves. One man cursed under his breath. Another muttered, "This isn't worth it." The leader barked back, furious, but his voice cracked. His army was crumbling again. Finally, boots shuffled. Steps pulled away from the porch. One by one. Except his. He stayed. Breathing heavy, rage dripping from every sound he made. You think you've won, he growled through the door. This isn't over. I'll be back. Stronger. With more men. You'll regret standing against me. I leaned closer, my words sharp as steel. Then bring whoever you want. But remember this. I won't be the one regretting. For a moment, I thought he might charge alone. That pride might blind him enough to break down the door himself. But then, slowly, I heard his boots retreat. Down the steps. Across the yard. Back to the street. I watched through the window as he and the others gathered. Their faces were pale, their shoulders slumped. Even in the dim light, I could see it, the look of men who realized they'd been beaten by something stronger than fists or numbers. They left. This time, quieter. No SUV roaring. No angry shouts. Just silence. But I didn't relax. I sat back down in my chair, revolver still warm in my hand, staring out at the empty street. Because the truth was, battles don't end when the enemy walks away. Battles end when they know not to come back. And I wasn't sure that lesson had sunk in yet. The clock ticked on, each second heavier than the last. My eyes burned, but I refused to close them. The night was almost gone. Dawn would break soon. And I wondered, would the morning bring peace? Or would it bring the next storm? I thought back on every step of the night. The fake HOA cops. The big man. The outsiders. The late night attack. All of it, it was building to something bigger. I could feel it. Like thunder building before lightning. I whispered to myself again. Be ready. Always be ready. The horizon began to glow faintly. Birds stirred in the distance. The first light of dawn spilled over the rooftops. And though the night was ending, I knew one thing for certain. The war wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. So let me ask you, neighbors. If a gang tried breaking into your home in the dead of night, crowbars on your door, numbers against you, their voices promising to take everything you own, would you stand tall and fire that warning shot? Would you fight to hold the line? Or would you let the weight of fear decide for you? Tell me in the comments, because how you answer that might just show if you're built to face the storm or not. The first light of dawn crept through the blinds, but peace didn't come with it. I sat there in my chair, revolver still heavy in my hand, staring at the quiet street. The night had been long. Too long. But my instincts told me it wasn't finished yet. Because evil doesn't give up when the sun rises. It waits for the moment you think you're safe. And sure enough, the sound came. Not footsteps this time. Not a car. But a voice. From outside, loud and sharp. This is your final warning. I stood, moving to the door, peering through the small crack in the curtain. There he was. The leader. Alone now. No big man. No outsiders. No backup. Just him. His face was pale, eyes bloodshot, hair wild like he hadn't slept a second. But his voice was fueled by rage. He shouted again, fists shaking in the morning air. "You've humiliated me, you think you've beaten me, but I don't leave without what I came for." I opened the door slowly, stepping onto the porch. The dawn light stretched across the yard, painting everything gold and red. The leader squinted against it, but he didn't back down. I kept my revolver low but visible. My stance firm. "You brought men. You brought threats. You brought fear. And still, you lost. Why are you here again?" His voice cracked, but he forced it out. "Because this isn't about rules anymore. This is about respect. Nobody disrespects me in my own neighborhood." I shook my head slowly. Respect isn't something you demand by breaking doors. Respect is something you earn. And you've earned nothing but shame. He growled, stepping closer. His hands trembled, but his pride pushed him forward. "You think you're stronger than me? You think your army training makes you untouchable? You don't scare me." I raised my voice, sharp and commanding. "Then step closer and see what happens." For a second, he froze. His body shook. His jaw clenched. He wanted to move, but deep down, he knew. He knew this was a fight he couldn't win. And that truth cut deeper than any bullet could. He dropped his hands. His eyes watered, rage spilling over into desperation. "You'll regret this. I swear you will." I stepped forward, towering over him now, voice steady as stone. "No, the only regret here is yours. You brought shame to your men. You brought shame to this neighborhood. And you'll carry that shame every time you walk down this street." His chest rose and fell, breaths shallow, shoulders collapsing under the weight of defeat. He turned sharply, stumbling back toward the street. But before he left, he threw one last look over his shoulder. His eyes were empty now. No fire. No power. Just the hollow stare of a man broken by his own arrogance. He disappeared down the street. His footsteps grew faint. And finally, silence returned. Real silence. The kind that carries peace instead of fear. I lowered my revolver. For the first time all night, my shoulders loosened. My jaw unclenched. The war was over. I walked back inside, sat down in the chair, and looked at the rising sun. Its light filled the room, warm and calm, chasing away every shadow that had haunted the night. And I thought to myself, this wasn't just about guns. It wasn't about HOA rules. It was about something bigger. It was about standing tall when others want you small. It was about defending what's yours when false authority comes knocking. It was about showing the world that respect is never taken by force, it's earned by strength, by courage, and by holding your ground when it matters most. The birds outside began to sing. The world woke up again. Neighbors stepped onto porches with coffee mugs in hand, unaware of the storm that had raged through the night. And I sat there, tired but unbroken, whispering the same promise I've carried since my army days. I will always be ready. Because freedom doesn't sleep. And neither do men like me. So now, friends, I want to ask you one last thing. If you stood where I stood, if men came for your rights, your freedom, your dignity, would you let them write the story of your life? Or would you fight and make sure the story ends with your strength, not their control? Tell me in the comments, because sometimes, the way you answer is the very lesson someone else out there needs to hear tonight.